So this is kind of like what's going to be a reconnaissance for me to get a better feel for what you have. I was down here many years ago. I can't remember when. And you have just a wonderful opportunity to do all kinds of good stuff for native wildlife. So all I need to do is get a look. I'm not going to take pictures or anything. We'll just talk about what you have. Roots are really important, especially on a bluff like that. Now, they aren't the final solution. The final solution is moved to like the desert where there's no faults nearby or something like that. My husband, who's a geologist, calls the PV Peninsula geology in warp speed, because usually things will take eons, and this hill's going to go down, not in our lifetime, but yeah. We can enjoy it. Yeah. So really interesting a moment. The geologist can tell terrestrial plates from ocean plates on the plate tectonic scheme of things. And so the plate that's out there is, well, I got to do it this way. Here is California, and the plate is actually diving this way. Before that, there was another plate that went this way, but this one's going this way, and it managed to pull off a piece of Mexico, and the Baja Peninsula and a little bit here is riding on this underplate, and it's crashing into basically the Santa Monica Mountains, the San Gabriel Mountains, and San Bernardino. They're all going up. So an excellent illustration of this is at the Point Vicente Interpretive Center. And I had the privilege of being with a group of geologists where we went around to all the preserves. I had the PV truck. That's why I got to go. I was driving. And she was the one who concluded why the Channel Islands are oriented about 90 degrees from most of California. And it was through magnetism in the paleo record. So I'm not a geologist. I'm more of an ecologist. So shall we get going?
Sure.
All right. Anybody want to lead the way?
Do you want to start looking at the top, or you want to get right into it? Because these are the steps.
Oh, these are the steps right here to go down. Well, let's go down then.
Let's go down. Okay. See, what we did here is we had all these acacias that were drying up, and we had them cleared out. We put in some toyons. Obviously, some did really well. Some
It happens.
always happens.
It happens. You know, when you buy flowers at Home Depot or any other nursery, you're pretty much guaranteed, unless you really screw up, that they're going to do fine. Native plants are a little bit more finicky, a lot tougher. So, yeah, the acacia is bad. And in your email, you had a vendor that was going to say, well, the seeds are going to just come back. It doesn't matter if you shred it or not. There's already seeds in the
Seeds everywhere.
yeah. So I sent an email to the conservation director at PVPLC, the Palos Verdes Peninsula Land Conservancy, because he and his crew, they've taken out a lot of acacia.
So we need to take out them. We need to get rid of the acacias.
Yeah,
They say
they're what you
They
call
don't believe
a
us.
harmful invasive plant. We had 10 plants that are bad. And this is like our number one. And I left references in my presentation. This is considered a harmful invasive. It's one of the top 10 bad guys by the California Invasive Plant Council. These guys spread. And a great way to get an illustration, if you get onto Google Earth and go back, center it over what's known as the Three Sisters Reserve, and then take the little slide bar as far back as you possibly can, as early as you can, and you can see, you can tell the color of the acacia. You know, it's this kind of medium green. And you'll see that the plants were only in the houses. And over time, they worked their way up into the habitat, threatening cactus wren habitat, um, California gnatcatcher habitat, all kinds of local native plants and animals that were being taken out by this acacia. So you got a lot of acacia to get rid of. You can use the trunks on the smaller ones to create guides for trails, or build yourself a teepee, or use it for firewood. Do you have a fire ring up there in the patio? Put in a fire ring and roasting marshmallows, or sell the firewood to. I find Google Earth really handy for all kinds of stuff. But yeah, this is a harmful invasive, and you'll get seedlings popping up next time we have a good rain. Your toyon should do well. It will take a while to grow, but it's a lovely plant. And you said that the acacias had turned brown?
Yeah.
That's probably why there's some sort of problem with water source there. But if you can trundle up a bucket and drop a gallon into each plant, you know, a couple times a month between now and next spring, they might start coming back. It's hard to tell. That one with a little bit of green on, absolutely. And of course, these guys here are doing fine. And the one up there and there, and you've got one there. So if there's any green on the leaves, I'd say go for it. There's one over there. And these things can get big. In the book that I have, and I'll show in the presentation, I call it the mother of all toyons. I had to back up in order to get it into my viewfinder. And it's a lovely plant. It's totally native and will support wildlife.
I missed the name of that one.
This is toyon. You can tell easily by these leaves that have teeth along the edges, and it is very stiff leaf. This is an example of how it conserves water. It's evergreen, and if you get a chance to touch the leaves, got a little bit of a waxy coverage. Oh, you got the rotter right there. Good. Because it's a little hard and waxy to the touch, this is how it conserves water. I spent 10 years working for PVPLC, and the acacias only spread. So this would be one of your focus for starters. And you can decide how you want to stage your planting and all that.
Okay.
Now this one here, no, this is the California buckwheat. They'll nectar them. This is not the Seacliff buckwheat. So I only show the plants of concern. No, I just put a few in because if you do too much, it's just, nobody remembers anything. But see these little itty bitty leaves that are kind of linear? This is the California buckwheat. It's huge. You notice how big this plant is? The Seacliff buckwheat is much smaller, and the Conservancy is working on keeping the California buckwheat away from the Seacliff buckwheat. You just want to have the dedicated source. So I could see the butterflies coming up here, but Mama Butterfly is going to know better than to use this to lay her eggs. This could host other butterflies. There's the Ackman blue, the marine blue, pygmy blue that will be using this. So however you want to go about removing these things and replacing them with native plants is whatever works best for you. There's no rule that says you have to do this and then you have to do that. Just make sure you get rid of them. And if you see over there, there's the saltbush,
Yes.
which is an excellent plant to install, and lemonade berry would be a really good one. The roots will go at least 30 feet to the through the soil, so that helps with the stabilization. So on there, I see some stumps still in place. They will put up sprouts. We had a fellow, a volunteer at PVPLC, who lived within walking distance of where all those acacias were, and he spent a lot of time coming up with different ways of taking them out. So they will re-sprout. Chris Sarabria, the conservation director at PVPLC, tested out a lot of different things. So Chris has tried salt,
Uh-huh.
but
I know. No one wants to use that nasty stuff, but it works.
So Roundup is good for dedicated applications. And you definitely don't want to introduce neonicotinoids in here because it spreads. It's a gene and it just spreads throughout the ecosystem, and then you start losing all your pollinators.
What's that nicotine?
Nicotinoids. My husband hauled home this giant container of this. It had 3 powerful insect killers in it. I go, I don't want that around here, because I knew it had the nicotinoids. They'll put up sprouts unless you treat it with Roundup. You know, right after you cut it off, paint it. The PVPLC field crews color it so they know what's been painted and what hasn't. Of course, they will fade, but you got a whole lot of acacia here. A whole lot. Figure out a way that would work best for the resources you have. And when you pull out the acacia, or say like that crazy thing and that,
Foxtail agaves.
and put them in, put in the natives.
Okay.
And one thing you're going to have to do when you pull things out, you open up the space and you're going to have weeds. So there'll be a lot of weeding going on, but I find it very pleasant. Just sit and weed. I see something here that's fun. This is native.
Native?
I was going to say, we should say friend or foe?
Friend.
Friend.
If it produces, should be purple nightshade, and the berries will come out and they're purplish blackish. Have you seen the berries?
Yes.
Don't eat them, but it's a nightshade.
Little black berries.
So plant more of the buckwheat.
Not that one though.
Not that one.
Not that one?
That one gets the sea cliff.
It gets the act. Look how big it is.
Yeah.
Well, it goes way down the hill too.
You know what school is on these things? Cut them off. Don't dig up the roots. And as the new plants grow, and the detritivores will decompose the roots as the new ones grow. And so you got that integrity going.
Because we need the roots.
Mm-hmm.
So we just need to, when they, like in the fall, when they stop all this flowering.
Well, if you're trying to get rid of it,
Yeah.
you can get rid of it whenever you want. So you don't have to stick to 100% natives. Just know that the more natives you have, right here, the better ecosystem you're going to have. So that's still the California buckwheat right there.
Yeah. But we planted that.
But I'm seeing one right here that's good news.
This
This is a desired species.
Yeah.
This California fuchsia, Epilobium canum.
Yeah.
And when it gets like this, the hummingbirds start fighting over it. And every year the annas win out over the Allens. And I started, they started blooming a couple weeks ago, but I noticed last week that the Anna's hummingbird was getting more and more aggressive, and I went out there and it buzzed me till it realized, oh no, I'm the human, I'm not the other hummingbird. And so it left me alone. They know, the birds know us in our yard, and so they just ignore us.
Yeah, it's been growing. I got them from Field Their Pain.
And when they go to seed, get a paper bag and start putting the seeds in the paper bag. And then before, these tend to bloom a little bit, finish up a little bit later, although, but look, here we go. I'm going to pass that around. You can see the seeds is that little tiny black dot.
And then the seeds have to be in the paper bag how long before you can start planting?
Oh, when it's just time to sow the seed. Or if
Oh,
you want to
okay.
grow them out on your own, you can do that.
Yeah, I thought I could start a bunch of them.
Sure. Now here's the, this is crystalline ice plant. And
Is it
it's a
invasive?
bad guy. It's a bad guy. Yeah, it's a bad guy.
Dad?
I have an adopted plot. We started in November 2016. And we started pulling out the ice plant. There wasn't much freeway ice plant. It's out at Vicente Bluffs, out at Point Vicente. And we kept after these guys in the last couple of years. So we're talking fall of 2020 and 2021. There's not this much ice plant coming back. So it's an easy one to take out. I mean, you still have to do it. You've got to remove this off the site when it has
When it
seeds.
starts flowering.
But
yeah.
the ice plant right there, just turn it upside down.
Oh, turn it upside down?
Let the little roots
Dry.
get dried out.
Oh, so we don't need to carry it, just turn
No.
it the other.
But these guys, you do.
Oh, fantastic! I can show you where we did that, right over there.
And where did this one come from?
Both the ice plants are from South Africa.
That's a type of eggplant too.
Yeah.
Did
type of
they
ice
have to
plant.
get
Really
planted
bad,
here?
bad, bad.
Well, they found their way now because they're
Well, I mean,
there's
do you think they got?
the thoughts is the ice plants, and particularly the freeway ice plant, traveled with the original explorers. So we're talking, we're in the
No bueno.
2000s. So we're talking 600 years, 400 years. Oh, good. This is excellent. You keep them here. Keep them here. They provide a food source. Well, I don't know what that is. So the one thing that will happen is your biologist may not know everything.
This came up on its own.
Oh, that's a lovely plant. Yes, Datura.
Still wilted now, but in the morning, it's just amazing. It's full of flowers.
Oh, they're beautiful flowers. Good. That probably came up from the seed bank. Yeah, it's a pygmy blue. They're really, really cute.
I didn't know we had the smallest butterfly in North America, you said?
Yeah, and I've seen this little butterfly in the deserts, locally, in the Sierras, on the coast up in Northern California. It's very widespread. It's not in danger of anything. Saltbush.
Oh, the sawbush.
And it
good
is,
one.
I didn't use any scientific names, but
How do they propagate? Do they just come up with
They
roots?
keep spreading.
well, the plants can be either female or male or both. And so let's see if we can't figure out which one is what. So this is the male part. And I don't think they have any more. Oh no, they're seeds right here. So these bushes, see those little specks? Those are the seeds.
Oh.
Those two.
But they've done some bad stuff with this bluff. You see all the trash up there, including like some rusted stuff. There's an old tire and car.
Well, that's the way they did things back then. Just pitch
Yeah,
it.
just dump it down the bluff, you know. Zoom in a little
So that's part of the property. Is that white fence part of the property?
bit. Yeah, and on this side, it's actually over that ridge. It extends a
Yeah,
little
I
bit
lined
that
it up
way.
with the other property. I guesstimated through Google Earth about 4 acres.
Yeah.
Okay, so you see this? Just a botany lesson for folks, maybe. Okay, why don't you all come down here? We're going to do a little bit of botany. Kind of gotta undo it. So this is called an inflorescence, better known as, you know, a flower head or whatever. And it's a buckwheat because buckwheats belong to the family Umbellifera. An umbel is like an umbrella. And all the buckwheats do this. They have different approaches, but they all have it. And but look at the leaves. They're very different from the California buckwheats, which were a little spiky. These have regular leaves. This is St. Catherine's lace from Catalina. It's a buckwheat, all right. Mm-hmm. And it's a Polygonaceae. It has multiple gonads. It's got multiple reproductive features here. And you can go look at the California buckwheats up there, and you can see it's the same plan.
So this is native of Catalina Island?
Catalina, yeah. So this one you can ignore. It depends on how strict you want to define your native garden. This is not native here, but it's a beautiful plant, and it's not gonna grow over everything. In fact, you can see the ice plants growing through it. The toyon's not really rigid with the calendar, but it starts off with white flowers, and that will get fertilized and turn into berries. And I saw a native squirrel sitting on top of a toyon chowing away on the red berries one day. It was out in the preserves. So this you all know here, right? Now, if you go hiking in the Palos Verdes Nature Preserves, especially in the big section on the south-facing slope, you'll see the really big stands of these. This is lemonade berry, but this one isn't really tall. If you look at it, you can see how it's all even as it moves up the slope. This is called wind pruned. I have an example in my presentation. But this is a lemonade berry. This is what you want. Its roots will go down a good 30 feet or so. It's very, very deep rooted. It's an evergreen. The leaves last about 4 or 5 years. And when we had that really bad drought, 2013, the plant was jettisoning its little bit older leaves. But if you feel it, we have some more that are a little bit easier to get to. You feel the leaf, it's very leathery and waxy. And you notice the leaves are angled like this. If you go to a jungle, I was fortunate to be able to go to Malaysia once, and we got out in the middle of the jungle. And they had these plants with leaves that go on for 3 meters, and they're out like this, trying to catch any photon they can get in the jungle. These guys, there's plenty of sun here. What they do have is the breeze, which is drying, and so they make them waxy to help reduce the water loss. But they're oriented like this because if your leaf is like this, you're going to have more water loss. You all have your work cut out for you. But I think the most important thing is kind of establish a plan. Might be easier to start from the top to go down because, you know, hauling this stuff out is harder down here. Although the ice plant, you can roll it up like a carpet. And the next year, pick up a few sprouts. Oh, I can see you're lining the walkway with acacia wood. Good. So yeah, let's go up. Here's one you can have fun with. This is sun cups. And on a good rain year in April, the beach bluffs will be just solid yellow. And you can pick the branch. And then what I started doing it, I worked at the Hyperion treatment plant, and I was starting my native plant garden. And so I broke these off. We need to have somebody have a volunteer hand.
Volunteer hands.
What?
Pull your hand.
Oh, okay.
And pull apart the little,
Oh, there's a pots.
Oh, look at all the seeds.
Yes.
yeah, there you go.
Zillions.
Oh my gosh. Sprinkle all
You can
around
either
it.
sprinkle the seed
Yeah.
and water it with the hose when a storm is coming through or supposed to be coming through. And
8 or 10 seeds.
Oh yeah.
yeah, so there's hundreds in that.
Yeah.
Steve, this is the stuff that you planted.
Yeah,
this
I know.
is from the
We-
S&S Seeds California native coastal wildflower mix.
Yeah, what we have there that
We
looks
had-
like from
we had a
Theodore
lot of
Payne.
them here until they all dried up. What did you say it was?
Sun cups. Our beach primrose. Now this one, it naturally, this is another buckwheat. See this? The umbel? And it's from Central Coast within a oak woodland kind of a thing. So I don't know how well it's going to do here. It's getting sandblasted, but we have them in our yard. And I took a picture of the yard today. It's in the presentation. You can see what they can do. I want to start a little bit by telling you about myself. I'm a marine biologist by trade. I spent about 33 years working for local sanitation agencies, including the infamous Hyperion treatment plant that spilled sludge into the ocean about a year ago, a little bit over a year ago. It was really a wonderful career, and I found myself eligible for retirement at age 55. And so I took it. I've always been interested in everything. I'm a generalist. I'm not one that can sit at the scope day in, day out and identify marine inverts. It was fun, but there's a limit to that. And so I picked up a job with the Palos Verdes Peninsula Land Conservancy. And what I found interesting is it was the same thing, just on land where the land hardly ever moved, and on a boat you're always doing this. And every day on the boat generated a good 10 days of work in the lab. There was one day where the land did move. I was standing and I had a college intern, and she goes, "We're having an earthquake now." We are, and oh yeah. So one day it did move. So there were geologists at my retirement party. He says, "Well, you know, things can move there." And I said, "Absolutely, but not nearly as much as a boat." Anyway, so with the monitoring in the ocean, what we call an end-of-point monitoring, we are looking for impacts to the marine community, to the water quality and all this stuff, and changes over time. And I learned that in that industry, environmental legislation works because the distribution of the impacts and the degree of the impacts both were significantly reduced as a result of legislation requiring better treatment. With the Palos Verdes Peninsula Land Conservancy, we were monitoring both the restoration sites and certain plants and species known as special status, and you'll see some of those in this presentation. So I knew what to do. I wrote up standard operating procedures. I built a database for the Conservancy. Last I heard, they're still using it because once you get the data into the database, you can pull it out and run really beautiful trends analyses. So I'll just do that. So what I'm going to talk about in this presentation is I'm going to talk about the Mediterranean climate. And you might think it's like overdone, but it's so important in multiple accesses. Then we'll talk about the impacts from human beings, and you probably already know what those impacts are. And then I'll have some wine with our lasagna dinner later. And we'll talk a lot about the sea cliff buckwheats and the El Segundo blue butterflies and the opportunities that you have here. And this is just amazing. And then obviously what you can do, you've already started. And I've baked into this multiple references. So the Mediterranean climate system. Are you all familiar with the Mediterranean climate system? It's really unique, and where it's found is very interesting. You can see up here, well, all the little pinkish areas are the Mediterranean climate areas on this planet. And they run from -30 to a little over -40 degrees latitude. That would be south. And the same on 30 to 40 or a little over 40 degrees north. And there's some variation in that because nature, by nature, is sloppy. And you can never make it fit precisely. And in these areas, they are all unique, but they have many things in common with the Mediterranean climate zone plants. So each one of them has its own unique flora. I've never really made it to any other Mediterranean climate zone, but I've talked to guys that one fellow I spent a lot of time with, he said, if you were taken into a helicopter in a blindfold and be dropped into like Chile, you will swear that you're in California. But things look alike, but then they look a little different. And it's such a nice, wonderful climate. Anything will grow here, hence the problems that we've got going. So the stats are fascinating too. It only covers 2¼ of the planet's land mass. We're going to exclude the ocean because that's massive. And yet this climate zone contains 16% of the Earth's plant species. In California itself, it contains our Mediterranean climate zone, just that little bitty spot there along the coast of California, moving into Oregon and also down into Mexico. I've got a better image in a moment so you understand where it is. It contains 33% of the U.S.'s plant species, with only 3% of the U.S. landmass. So these numbers are boggling. In most parts of the world, precipitation falls during the summer. And even in California, when you move into the mountains, you're no longer in the Mediterranean climate. You are into alpine or whatever. And it will snow in the mountains, but it also rains in the mountains. And it's really fun seeing all the thunderheads above our local mountains in the summertime. When I rode my bike mostly, going to college and also work. And the way you go down Silver Spur, I would get these beautiful views of the thunderstorms. And then it rains in the wintertime. So no rain in the summer, but it rains in the wintertime. The flora and the fauna have evolved together to deal with this long summer dry period. There's various adaptations. So I like this image. This is what has been delineated as the Mediterranean climate area in the West Coast. Notice all the Channel Islands are included. And there's a little bit of Mexico, but the more you drop down onto the landmass, the more tropical it looks and deserty going down the center. And you can see up the coast, you can see Lake Tahoe right there, and then Mono Lake is outside the boundaries. If you've ever been to Mono Lake, I have a favorite cheap, free campsite before you go up into Bodie. But this is the California Floristic Province. Part of Oregon, a good chunk of California, all the Channel Islands, and Baja California. So does any of you know a local endangered species? This is not a trick question. I know you know it. A local endangered native species.
There's the El Segundo blue butterfly. First one.
There it is. That's a male on the flower head. And now that you've been looking at buckwheat flower heads, you can see they're just crammed with little itty bitty flowers, Polygonaceae. So what's the problem here in the Mediterranean climate? Obviously, everybody lives here. Oh, well, we couldn't really get a good look. But when I was working for the city of LA, we would steam out of Marina del Rey Harbor, and if we went right, we would go past Venice, Santa Monica, drive a little bit, and all the structures would kind of disappeared except for maybe right along the highway and a little bit of buildings in Malibu, and of course the fancy houses up higher. But basically there was a lot of greenery, there was habitat. If we steamed out and went left, going through, you'll see that through El Segundo, Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach, and then down into Torrance, it's all built on. It's just really packed full of building. So there's really no habitat here. And so anytime you ever get out on a boat, check that out. When you're south of Marina del Rey, it's white. There's just white. And if you get north, once you get past Santa Monica, you see habitat, plants and birds and lizards and butterflies. There are butterflies that look like the El Segundo blue right up that canyon in Santa Monica, but it's not an El Segundo blue. They've done the DNA on it. They haven't done that. So that means there's been aggressive urbanization and loss of habitat. Our area, California's Mediterranean climate area, is labeled as a biodiversity hotspot. And I have to read the numbers. Defined as 0.5% or 1,500 endemic plant species with a 70% loss of habitat. So we were talking earlier about buckwheat. There's over 500 varieties of buckwheat plants. You can find them here at the beach dunes, all the way up to, you find them in the desert, you find them in the mountains, in the foothills, in the mountains, all the way up to above tree line. It is a remarkable, diverse, and successful genus. To learn more about this diversity, I put in a reference there for you all. Now I want to talk about El Segundo blue butterflies. I talked about them when they were flying, but this is going to give it to you in a copy that you can all share. I don't think I have any. I only have 2 images that need to be cited. So one was with the map of the Mediterranean climate areas. Phil Rundell, a professor emeritus at UCLA, has given me his blessings to use it as long as I just put down his student in his name or the artist in his name. So this is it's definitely tied into the Mediterranean climate. It's a single brood insect that reproduces only once a year, and that blew me out of the water. the critters I dealt with in the marine environment, they were always reproducing. We find reproductive stages year-round. There really is really not much of a seasonal effect. We were mainly sampling at 60 meters depth or 200 feet. So you would find gravid females all the time. And it requires a sea cliff buckwheat for the entire life cycle. We're talking about from the egg to the larva, which is a caterpillar, to the pupa or the chrysalis, to the adult, the butterflies. And it's considered a butterfly throughout it. I was just going, how in the world could that be successful? It reproduces once. The next year you have reproduction. So I'll show a little bit more on that. But think about their natural threats, lizards and birds. I've mainly seen the lizards go after them. The way you know that the butterflies are starting to come out when they've warmed up enough is you watch for the lizards walking toward the plant. And then they'll climb up, and when the butterflies get going, they'll jump. And I've actually witnessed 2 males be eaten on the fly, and then a female was smart enough to get out of the way and just got a little nip out of the wing. So you'll see butterflies with nips out of their wings, especially on the El Segundos when you go down there. That's because they've escaped a hungry lizard. And the bigger threat is humans, because we built over their paradise. So the life history, we have the male and the female. The male are the pretty blue, and the females, oh, you can almost see it. It's a chocolatey brown, but they have these hairs on their backs and on their flanks below the wings. And those are blue, so when they're flying, they kind of look mottled blue. The little pygmy blue butterfly does the same thing, and so I was seeing a little mottled blue. But you got to spend a lot of time looking at butterflies to do that. And so the first thing they do once they're out of their chrysalis is they mate. Now, as I talked about during the butterfly walk, the boys come out and they tank up. They do that. They get filled with nectar. They utilize a lot of energy looking for girls. And they're really ready for a girl pretty quickly. The female, when she comes out, they all have to wait for about a half hour, 45 to an hour to get blood into their wings so they're stiff enough to fly. The female comes out, yeah, she'll get tanked up, but she has to wait until it's just right. And I've seen more females rebuff males. Finally, they find the guy that she wants, and then they mate. And this is a picture of a mating pair. So guys, when they are mating, I didn't bring a picture of this, the female continues to exude pheromones, which brings in other males. And so they spend a lot of time fighting off other males. So guys, if you think being a guy, a human male, is bad, imagine being a butterfly and having to fight off other intruding males. One year at Torrance, during a butterfly walk, we saw a pair being attacked by 3 other males.
Hey, what's the name of the thing that you exude? What's the name of the
Pheromones.
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 She gets some of that.
And it's written. It's been recorded, so you can look back. The butterflies spend a lot of time smelling things. I think their antennas are part of the deal. I don't have it fully worked out. You can see on these antennas, they're sticking up, and the same on those 2 butterflies. They're kind of like out like that. But so their flight season is in June and July. It used to be considered late June, July, and August, but I think there's been a shift. But we can still see mating going on in August, where the butterfly, the host plant, the sea cliff buckwheat, gets a lot of water. And that place locally is at Point Vicente Interpretive Center. They have a little garden in the front, and the gal that manages it waters like crazy because they're trying to make it pretty. And so this is a female laying an egg. I think there's an egg on in the middle of that one thing. There's a little white spot. I think that's an egg. She wasn't doing it very good. I think she had just started depositing her first eggs. But what blew me away is a plant that was planted about 2-3 months earlier and only had a couple of flower heads on it. I go, what is she doing? There's not going to be enough food for her babies. So this happens in July and August. The eggs hatch, and it could start even in June. And there is a picture of a larva. Now when they first come out, it's so teeny tiny because the egg is the size of a small period. And I've never seen them. The female puts it generally, not this gal, but generally they'll put the egg inside the flower head. That's what the butterfly is going to eat. They go through 5 instars, and right here, did you guys notice this thing? It takes a while to see them. They're really hard to find, but they just burrow right through the flower heads. And they'll leave marks on the flower heads. It's just like a little plow has gone through. And that plow is the butterfly larva. This is what insects larvae do around the world, and that's why they're so hated for farming and stuff, because they'll eat anything they get their little mouths on. So they go through.
How long they stay in the flower?
So it's about 3 days for the female eggs to develop, and about 3 days once she deposits them. About 3 to 4 days for the miniature larva to come out, and then it will eat, and then the insects have to shed their skin because they have a hard exterior. Same with crabs and everything. And then once they get out, they kind of go whoop, they get bigger, and then they eat, and then it's time to shed that skin, and then they go whoop. And so by the time they're in the 4th instar, they're about this big, and in the 5th, there's this big. So these obviously are close-ups. You saw down on the hill how big those individual flower heads are, and there's still 20 to 50 flowers on that flower head. So the larvae will hang around August, September, and I've got an extra thing written there. This is an illustration of the larvae. I've never seen a larva of an El Segundo blue. I've seen the larva of the Pillsbury blue because they're being reared in captivity. We don't have to do that for the El Segundo blue. All you have to do is plant their seacliff buckwheat and a few other natives. And so this is what a fellow Rick Rogers interpretation of a larva, and he lets me use this with permission that I mention his name. He's quite a character. I have trained a little bit under him to get what they call a recovery permit to survey for the endangered butterflies. You have to train with somebody who knows what they're doing. And I certainly didn't know anything about butterflies when I started this, but I got my recovery permit, and I've done butterfly surveys. I did them for a number of years for PVPLC, the Land Conservancy, and I've done them for homeowners who need to know. But I'm pretty much done with the butterfly surveys, and I'm going to relinquish my recovery permit next February when I'm supposed to renew it, because there are people that have been trained that can take over, and I don't have to be dependent on us old farts. So these are predators. The western fence lizard, and I wrote side-spotted, it's side-blotched lizard. And they can be about this big out there in on the sand dunes covered with habitat. And more of an orangish color, whereas this fence lizard, they like to sit on stuff and go out there. This is high-end El Segundo blue butterfly habitat. And also side-blotched lizards, fence lizards, Sonoran bumblebees, all kinds of fun stuff out there. When I did a survey, a one-day survey, and spotted over 190 butterflies with just a quick, in this little itty-bitty area. So you put in the Seacliff buckwheat with all these other native plants, you're going to have the butterflies here in huge numbers. I can't see where it is, but there's Artemisia in here. About 1/3 Artemisia, 1/3 the Seacliff buckwheat, and then 1/3 everything else. And there's a South Bay Parkland Conservancy is going to get set up with the city of Torrance to go in and weed out. There's tumbleweed that's becoming a bit of a problem, and a few other things. There's bromus right here. Those are easy to remove. Artemisia, oh, California sagebrush, I'm sorry. And Encelia californica is a really nice sunflower plant. So I brought these books, and you can decide. If you need more, let me know and I'll order some up and drop them by. So it's organized by flower color. This is the California bush sunflower. Or you can just say Encelia. It's the only Encelia around here. I could talk at length about the coastal plants and the desert plants, but I'm not going to subject that to you right now. So this is what you should aim for. And I've got a number of references in here. If you want to volunteer and become familiar with El Segundo blue habitat, these are the guys to do it with. They're building it around a lot. For doing it yourself projects, go to the ESB Coalition, and you have to hunt around a bit, but there's explanations on how to plant. And I've written a lot of that. It was a collaborative effort. And then CalScape, where you put in your address, and it will return a list for El Segundo blue butterflies. So this is information for you guys to utilize, and hopefully Dan can distribute this to everybody so you can have it and inform yourself. So, major steps. This is an acacia forest that is no longer there. And I went through it twice a month for a little over 5 years as we did a bird survey, with one site being inside a 21-acre restoration site and the other sites being different kind of habitat areas within it. And we go through that, and there wasn't much in the way of birds. There really wasn't. When you see the seeds with the little orange thing around it, that is edible. But if you wait too long, they get kind of rubbery. But you really need to remove your invasives, and the acacia is huge. There's got to be a way to get grants for this kind of work if you can't raise the funds, if you run out of human power. I'm not real good with grants. I worked on hard money for most of my career. But acacia is so invasive. Just knock them down when you're ready to move in and plant. If you leave them out, they're so dastardly, they're going to start growing again on you. Freeway ice plant and crystalline ice plant. Freeway ice plant, you just roll it up. There's, he just died earlier this year, a professor out of UCLA, and he was in charge of the LAX dunes, and so he knew you could just roll up the ice plant like a carpet. So they started doing it. Well, the LAX dunes are big. You could probably have the same problem here. You got a steep enough hill, and it started to take a life on its own, and everybody was like running out of the way until it finally stopped. But what it does is it rolls up with the roots out, and it decomposes on the site. And you'll have a few popping up the following year, but if you stick well with the roots, then you're good. Tumbleweed. This is what it looks like when that small, you still need gloves to pull it up. I have done a few. It's designed to break right there when they get to the big, tumbleweed thing. So you don't want to pick by hand a tumbleweed bigger than that. And I got on CalFlora for a photo.
So you gotta pick it up from the middle?
Tumbleweeds, they do this in December in the wintertime. They'll be loaded with seeds. If you go to CalFlora and you type in they've got a site, you have on one side, you put in the scientific name and then that's a Jepson manual. But you can look up the tumbleweed and you'll see all the different iterations. They can be big, a big ball of the stuff. Say it was here, like this. And when the winds blow, it snaps off right there at the junction of the root and the plant. But handling a mature tumbleweed, and of course, it's all brown and everything, and it rolls down the highway and dropping its seeds everywhere. It's dastardly. So that's another one to get rid of. And what you can do is go to the Invasive Plant Council to learn about them. So again, you'll have that reference. So now I'm going to go through the local native plants. Today we saw both the lemonade berry and the saltbush. This one right here on the left is the lemonade berry. And, wait, no, that's acacia. Back there. See a little bit lighter green? And there's a dark blob to the right of it. That's a boxthorn that you could put here if you wanted. And then that's the saltbush. And that's a homeowner. They had a massive landslide, 2 houses together, and the landslide was threatening their houses and the 2 on the other sides. And you probably heard about it. It's just down the street here. And so up there, that was the fix, and I've been monitoring that. I'm going to be getting to that one. So you can see the saltbush makes a large canopy, and the lemonade berry right there is going to continue to grow. There's other lemonade berries on the site, and California Coastal was very upset that if any lemonade berries were taken out because of this special plant. This is both of these plant species. See the color down here? The purple, and we're the purple zone right along the coast. It only occurs in a small part of California. So that's why they're so nuts. The people in Sacramento, they don't know. They're like everywhere here. And in fact, one of the conservation directors was so upset at lemonade berry growing into cactus habitat. She goes, I want to take out the lemonade berry to provide more cactus habitat for the cactus wrens. I said, I've been saying that down there at Oceanfront Estates, take out the California buckwheat and put in the Seacliff buckwheat. 10 years those people heard that from me. And the conservation director at the time said, touche, valid point. So here's our host plant. And you can see the purple along the coast. It goes down into Baja California. And then the green up there is a different area, but it goes from here all the way up past San Francisco. And what's really insane, on the coast above there, there's a dune buckwheat called Eriogonum latifolium. Looks totally different than our Eriogonum parvifolium. And people were calling them both dune buckwheats. Now I started that too because I didn't know about latifolium. And I had people in Sacramento, and this is where all the directives and the rules and legislation and everything takes place. They were conflating these two species. So I started a campaign. Oh, when did I do that? Maybe about 5, 6, 7 years ago. I don't recall. And calling it a sea. Oh yeah, when we were making this book. Yeah, so it was a little bit longer. Calling it Seacliff buckwheat. There's a reference called Jepson herbarium, and they have a book like this. And they have an online reference that I use more than I do the book because the book is so dang heavy. But I picked it out of there. They had, I don't know, 15, 20 suggested common names, but only one species name, scientific name. So I started calling it Seacliff buckwheat because at Palos Verdes, there's buckwheats right on those near vertical walls. In April, we were at a Jepson workshop on plants, and I heard the young folks there talking about the Seacliff buckwheat. Yes! It took! Who would guess? All right, so this is the Artemisia, the sagebrush, California sagebrush. This was in late 2021. This is at my adopt-a-plot. And so it looks a little scraggly, but the minute the rain starts going, it turns into this beautiful light green, and it's alive. And the California gnatcatcher is a threatened species and builds their nest in that. And you can see that the sagebrush has a bigger distribution, but it's still right there along the coast. Metelliha. Who could have a flower show without the Metelliha poppy? And that's from my backyard. So what I like to tell people they can do when they're in their urban landscape, you can plant for seasonal color. Have native plants produce your seasonal color. And what I have found is that it gives you a sense of the passage of seasons. Whereas stuff like this, it looks the same throughout the year. It can look like this in December and it'll look like this on 4th of July. And I really, really like that. I've had a native plant garden started we put the plants in January '94. So for color, we have the wishbone plant, which produces beautiful magenta flowers. Seacliff buckwheat, you know what the buckwheats look like, is kind of pinkish whitish. And then they turn rust red. And in the fall, the California fuchsia, you have a beautiful example, and it's ramping up right now on your trail. And then in the wintertime, I like to go with Toyon because it produces red berries around Christmas. So here's the wishbone plant. This is my backyard. I have other plants in there too, but that is the color they get. And these plants are a little bit bigger. I actually cut mine back because I have trails through this. We had a lawn there, and I had them put in decomposed granite, but I knew which way I was going to be walking, so I had to build little trails throughout all that. And you can see wishbone has a much broader distribution. What's interesting is there are more than one species of wishbone, and in April I got to take pictures of 2 other wishbone species. I've been down in Anza Borrego and taken pictures of other wishbone species as well as Encelia plants. We only have one Encelia here. And then the Seacliff buckwheat. I'm going to talk a bit about what it does, what you can expect from this plant. Oh yeah, and check out that distribution. So the parvifolium goes up and down the coast, but we only have the El Segundo blue butterfly between Bologna wetlands to just around the corner to, they have them at Abalone Cove now. So it starts growing in mid-March, and the conservation director that wanted to take out lemonade berry for the cactus wrens, so they could have more cactus. She's a very determined woman. She moved on. The Conservancy lost a really good person with her, but she's working closer to home, so it's understandable. But during the drought in 2013, she had some money and she got permission under the grant to move monies from here into where my adopt-a-plot is. And it was a horrible drought. The plants went in like in April, really, really late, especially during a drought. And so she had this little container. She had a source of water, and she'd have put these containers on a little trolley with wheels and watered them by hand for a year and a half every week that she was working. So her Friday afternoon task was go down and hand water them. A few of the plants survived, but she kept going out the field and wondering, when are these things going to start growing? Because the buckwheats weren't doing anything. And I told her between the second and third week of March, and one day she came in. They're blooming, or they're pushing new leaves or new branches. And I looked at the calendar. There it was, in between the second and third week of March. So there you go. And
And do you trim them? Do you cut them when they're?
I trim mine in my yard because I trim mine, but not what you got going down there. I just leave them alone. They aren't going to get much. Well, let's see how big they get. 1 to 3 feet high. Up, spreads up to 6 feet. So, and all they'll do is they'll merge together. It will drop seed and new seedlings will come up. And so when you look at a bunch of them, say you had well, like in Torrance, and you've got big stands of them, it's kind of hard to count how many plants are actually there. They're like clumps. And when they push enough blooms, you'll have the Elsagunda blues will find them. With the Seacliff buckwheat, the Elsagunda blues will find it on this in your neighborhood. You plant them, they'll show up. And so this is at that place where there was a landslide. These plants, now he watered like crazy to get him going, and I'm encouraging him to knock it off. And so he got the word in April this year to knock it off. But here's the buckwheats, and they have the butterfly on them. And as I mentioned down there are over 500 variants of, subspecies and variants of buckwheats in California. You can see them here at the beach, in the prairies, and the foothills, in the mountains, high mountains, above sea level, and diverse, different colors, different strategies. They're really quite phenomenal. And this is when you have blooming. This is for your fall. And you can see California fuchsia is everywhere. It's just everywhere. Anything that's colored in means the plant is there. We looked at how to collect the seed from it when we were down there. So you can actually, you can either throw the seeds out before a rainy day in December. That's my standard. I watch the weather forecast, and if it's going to rain, I put out all my seed. It doesn't start growing till the late spring, and it reproduces by seed and stolon, so you can get plants going with seed. It will kind of spread wherever you put it, but with the amount of land you have, that's good. That's good. And a beautiful, beautiful color. And if you've got it in a garden area, if you decide you want to have fuchsias in here, I cut them back, late December, early January. It's really easy because you just trim them down. I have some, I don't go for yard art, but I couldn't resist these ceramic mushrooms at Armstrong, so I stuck some in there. So right now they're covering up the little mushrooms, but once they're done for producing their seed, I cut back the foliage. It's a very light gray-green foliage, and it's really, really a nice ground cover. I like it. And then Toyon. So this is a granddaddy. This is the one I had to back up in order to get the whole tree into plant. And there's the white flowers that start coming out. So you have Toyons. I don't know if they're gonna bloom this year, but you never know. And you will be an expert on Toyon soon. And then here's the red berries. And you can prune the Toyon. They take very well to pruning. You can also prune the lemonade berry. And in fact, along that one wall, there's lemonade berry. And if you look carefully, you can see some flower buds starting up. And of course, the Toyon is everywhere. But we know Hollywood was named after this plant because they called it the Hollywood tree. I want to give an example of the seasonal changes. This was April. You'll see different colors, and I've got Dr. Seuss plants with yellow flowers at the same time as the purple sage with the lavender flowers. It's a really pretty mix. And I've got all kinds of bulbs here. You can see that in April. They were pushing it. The bulbs came, they bloomed.
What are the yellow ones?
Oh, this is the sun cups. You got them.
Which ones?
These yellow ones here. And then up there is native bulbs. I play with native bulbs. And
What's the name? What is it? What?
oh, that is the Venus lily. Or I call it the calico lily. Yeah. So, but the sun cups are very easy, and the way I started them in my yard is they grow naturally along our beaches, except for the machines that groom the sand. And I collected a bunch of these stems like I was showing you guys, and at that time I had this drawer that was worthless. It was about that long, that wide, and it was about that deep. It was worthless. There was nothing you could put in there. So I got a big old piece of tabloid paper and I just started dropping these stems on it. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then one day I go, oh yeah. And all the little seeds had fallen out. I took them home and just broadcast them in the yard. That's all I did. And I've had the yellow sun cups since probably about 95, 96. I never buy them. A bunch of us are working in a collaborative group for the Beach Bluffs, and the gal from the Fish and Wildlife Service says, don't waste your money on the sun cups. The seeds are there, they'll come up. So you can see the sun cups are going to town. These are in blue, real nice lavender color. These have gone to seed, and these, there's always a sun cup blooming here and there and here and there. But April is the month for sun cups. But see this little pink right here? You have some Eriogonum grandis rubescens. Purple sage. This is a purple sage. It's kind of a lavender flower. This right here is the red buckwheat. But it's really a hot pink. And I took that today. They started showing their color in May. So May, June, July, August. 4 months now. I have some of the poppies. Our local poppies are yellow with the orange center. They do well, and they can be last for 2-3 years, whereas the orange poppies don't. You can't really see it, but this is where part of my fuchsia is. I have more in the backyard. So every month you drive by the house, it looks a little different. And you really get the feel for the drought season when you put in these kind of plants. And so that's what I wanted to share with you. I didn't want to get any technical stuff. I gave you references for looking up on how to do things. And if you want me to send you anything, I can do that. But the Calscape and esbcoalition.org will give you a lot. And you can always email me. Email me is the best way to contact me.
Yeah. So I can give your email out then?
Absolutely. Just remind me that you were here in this room, that you're from this complex.
What's that other, I know it's the sea cliff buckwheat, but what's the other plant that I showed you? It was at the PV Conservancy. That other one that you said it does better in clay soil?
Degree that impacts both were significantly removed. Probably the Artemisia.
That's it.
That's it, yeah. Because what you can do is, they're doing fine at the Torrance site. It's a little bit higher up and it was bulldozed. I think the soils are a little bit finer there. But if you walk along the Redondo Beach sites, walk on the top and walk on the bottom, you should start recognizing the plants. And you'll see that the sagebrush looking kind of wimpy. The Encelia does great in sand. It does great in more clayey soils, regular soils, loamy. Just as long as it's in the coast, in the southern part here. In the desert, if you go out to the Anza-Borrego, the Mojave, Death Valley, there's all kinds of different kinds of Encelia, and they look like them. So when you get your Encelias going here, I didn't collect any seed. I might have seed. If you guys want to sow them in December, send me an email and I'll get them together. So yeah, that was it. So the PVPLC has to provide plants that will work up there, on the north side of the hill, on the west side and the east side. They're all a little bit different, and people are buying them. So when I would work on the plant sales for the California Native Plant Society, the local chapter, people would want to know about the various plants. And the first thing I would do is ask them, where do you live? Are you on the south-facing part, or are you in Torrance or Redondo Beach? Because then I could recommend a plant that will do well. I've tried to do a lot of plants that didn't work. Because, well, we didn't know what we were doing, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were mostly experimenting and putting in, well, whatever we wanted, fig trees, outside. And then we're like, yeah, the native ones seem to be doing really great.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we're in the syncline, which you told us about, but what is that layer that's sticking out? They're really hard.
They're really crumbly.
They're really crumbly because it keeps crumbling down and breaking through our fence.
Diatomite.
Diatomite.
White chalky stuff.
Yeah, but there's stuff that grows directly out of diatomite too, right?
Yeah, it's the whiter stuff, right? I don't think so. At my adopt-a-plot, we've been putting plants in on that stuff, and it's not sticking. So I think cactus, because in the property where they had the landslide, they had the same stuff, and the cactus are doing okay. But you got to supplement the irrigation there. So yeah, it's not doing real good. But I figured, why not try? And you dump a lot of water on them.
Ophelia, is here like a little yellow brittle bush?
Brittle bush, yeah. Well, so we call them California bush sunflower. Hence, that's why we refer to it as Encelia. And anybody who works with me at the Adopt-A-Plot, I give everybody a good course on what we're dealing with, and have had to develop supplemental literature so they won't pull up a plant we want. Where the happens. You know, you can't get mad at people. So that's it. Any other questions? I'm going to do this. Thank you.